Hey, shalom, shalom. Yabashim Shabrakatham. Anakna Waha Ibar Yasha'Allah Hawalakim. La Adam Kal Shabwai Baharacha Wakak Shaw Yabashim Shah. Hey, we the Hebrew Israelites coming to you week in and week out through the Spirit and power of Yabashim Shah to preach to you Negroes, Latinos, West Indians, Haitians, and Israelite foreigners. Repent ye, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Call her Layim La, Yahweh, Bashim Shah, Bashim Racha Hakwadash. Wamashana Kabadim Zakoyim Nawa Malakam Shaw Yasha'Allah Zakoyim Racha got a wall. Wachasa, Washalamam, Wabarakim, Lahabachayr, Shah, Hagawayr, Shah, Shalom. Alright, so all praise to the Most High Yahweh, which means He exists. Bah Hashem, in the name Yahweh Shah, He delivers. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Israel, the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, and mercy, peace, and blessings to the elect of the nation of Israel. Shalom, which means peace. Alright, so we just going into this article on RT. It reads, it says, Sergei Polatev is Russian talk of using nukes, just hot air, or Moscow's warning serious. The West fails to understand that Russia's atomic arsenal is the fundamental basis of its great power status. Salat. By Sergei, co-founder and editor of Vet4 Project. Just the other day, Moscow sharply upped the ante in the standoff over Ukraine. It gave the go-ahead for referendums in territories formerly controlled by Kyiv, and announced a partial military mobilization. It also again issued a reminder that its actions are backed by the world's most powerful weapons. This was immediately dubbed nuclear blackmail in the West. All right, and they put in all these different all these different propagandas and stuff into the news and stuff like that, you see, but Putin will press the button, you see, and he's not bluffing. But let's keep going. It says, so why are we hearing these hints over and over again? Is Russia really prepared to use such force, or is it just a form of verbal deterrence? First, since the end of the Cold War, there has been an imbalance between Moscow's nuclear power, its economic capabilities, and its political weight in the world. Secondly, these weapons of mass destruction are perceived by our former adversaries as a relic of the past rather than an relevant factor in international relations today. So I'm reading again. It says, secondly, these weapons of mass destruction are perceived by our former adversaries as a relic of the past rather than a relevant factor in international relations today. And it is a relevant factor in international relations today because you see America doesn't want everybody else to have that capability of mass destruction. So a lot of times, like with Iran, they tried to put sanctions on them so that they could not develop the nukes, you see, but these nations are now saying they are strong. You see, the U.S. was that world superpower, but see, now everybody has that capability. It says Russia, on the contrary, sees the nuclear arsenal as the basis of its sovereignty and has assumed that as long as we were still a great power in nuclear terms, we could also claim to be important in terms of foreign policy, even as an economic dwarf. It was the presumption of being a great power that determined our actions in Ukraine and throughout the post-Soviet space. Because just going into the Soviet Union, USSR, they was a superpower of the world, and then they dwindled down a little, and now they got just like this article is going into. It says, on the contrary, it sees the nuclear arsenal as a basis, so that's a foundation of its sovereignty, and has assumed that as long as we were still a great power in nuclear terms, we could also claim to be important in terms of foreign policy. All right, so they got the button as well, So let's go to that. This is Joel chapter 3 and chapter 2. or chapter 1. So let me see if I can find it. Joel chapter 3 and verse 9, it says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men. This is what these nations are doing. You see, everybody has that nuclear capability. It says, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up, be your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. All right, so those nations that were weak, they're gathering up their arms, and they're saying that they're strong because they got the same capability as the West. So they're gathering up together for that third world's woe. All right. It says, this difference in perception is the fundamental reason for the Ukrainian crisis, and it's why we in the West cannot find any common ground to at least try to kickstart some sort of agreement. Russia does not pretend that the West shares its views on Ukraine. If there were such illusions a decade or more ago, they have long since dissipated. The Kremlin now seeks to push Washington and Brussels out of the country, which is considered to be part of the vital interest zone, and if this fails, it hopes to reformat Ukraine as a state and remove its potential as a threat. In this endeavor, Moscow doesn't care what others think. The West is stubborn, and this means Moscow's years-long attempts to settle the matter with little blood spilled have failed. In the interim, things have only gotten worse, and we are now in the 8th month of a large-scale conflict in Ukraine, with Kyiv having lost control over 5 regions since 2014. We also have 2 armies facing each other, one with the largest country on earth at its rear, and the other with the most powerful military bloc in history providing huge support, referring to the U.S. And this one was referring to Russia, so 2 superpowers. By raising the stakes and again mentioning nuclear weapons, Russia is telling the West, the harder you push us and the more you drag us into this conventional conflict in Ukraine, the closer the nuclear scenario will be, both tactically, strikes against specific targets in the theater of operation, and strategically intercontinental missiles. The more you try to pin us down, the less choice you will leave us. There can be no winners in a nuclear war, so your military victory in Ukraine is impossible. Thus, you have 2 options: either continue to help Kyiv or withdraw your direct backing. Ukraine will lose either way, and you will lose with it, or you can limit your involvement and survive. So you're giving them an ultimatum. I'm not going to go through the whole article, but I'm get a precept. This is Ezekiel chapter 21. Ezekiel chapter 21 and verse 9. It says, Son of man. Verse 8. Again the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, prophesy and say thus, saith the Lord Yahweh Shemel Shah. Say, a sword is sharpened and also furbished. All right, when you sharpen a sword, you're preparing it for battle. All right, and that's what's happening right now. You see, with these countries, they're gathering up their weapons, specifically the ICBM missiles, the arrows mentioned in the scriptures, and they're being sharpened and furbished. And let's get that word furbished. Furbish means it says polish, make smooth, make bare. Let's see. To sharpen, to make it bright. So basically getting prepared. You see they're sharpening that sword, the ICBMs, that weapon. It says, it is sharpened to make a sore slaughter. It is furbished that it may glitter. Shall we then make mirth? It contamineth the rod of my son as every tree. And he hath given it to be furbished, that it may be handled. This sword is sharpened and it is furbished to give it into the hand of the slayer. All right, and that the sword being put on Jake on 2/3. You see, but I'm applying the sword to the ICBMs because that sword is sharpened and is going to be used. You know. Let's go back to a little bit of this article because Putin will press that button and says, I'm gonna read it again. It says Ukraine will lose either way, and you can lose with it, or you can limit your involvement and survive. So either they're gonna push the bear and make the bear angry, you know, going into I think it's Ezekiel 35 or 38. It says it might be 39. It's a lot. 38. So it says, thus saith the Lord, Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shah, power. It shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought. And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages, America, Babylon the Great. This place is open for the taking. It doesn't have any type of protection. You see, they talked about some type of like ICBM defense system, but that's not going to work. You see, it says, I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls, having neither bars nor gates. All right, so, and again, it's referring to Babylon the Great because it's going to be invaded. You see, the Medes, it's going to be a spirit on the Medes, which are the Russians, to invade this place. All right. And those that are at rest are these so-called Americans, these Babylonians. You see, they live carelessly after a lifestyle of pleasures, overindulgence, and just thinking that nothing's going to touch this place, you know. But that's essentially the spirit of what it's saying right. It says, the harder you push us and the more you drag us into this conventional conflict in Ukraine, the closer the nuclear scenario will be, both tactically, strikes against specific targets in the theater of operations, and strategically, intercontinental missiles. The more you try to pin us, the less choice you will leave us. All right, so basically it's a lose-lose situation for you so-called Americans. All right, because it's just gonna push, you know what I'm saying, the Medes to it's just gonna push them and towards closer to that evil thought, you know. I just want to do a quick hit. You know, Lord's widow Zedifon, call her Layim La, Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, Bashim Kakadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that told me this truth and rule well. A much respect to you brothers out there, preaching this truth with all righteousness and sincerity. Shalom, shalom.